Hello everyone, welcome back to just another F1 podcast here in the Ep8 Motorsport. My name is Richard Smyth and this is Season 2, Episode 8. We've just had the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I'm delighted to say I'm joined once again by Ryan Caldwell. Ryan, thank you for joining me. What's your immediate thoughts after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix?
Well, instantly I can say, what an amazing race. You know, many fans have been waiting for a race like this for a long time, and I'm finally glad that we got an amazing podium, an amazing finish. And honestly, it was probably one of the highlights of the last 3 years, I'd say.
Yeah, it definitely was a fantastic race. Fantastic end of the race, more importantly. We'll start off, as we always do, talking about the F1 fantasy teams. We'll keep it very brief this week. There hasn't really been too much to change other than the lead, which, Ryan, I think you are now in the lead finally. I overtook you for 1 week. You've reclaimed your crown.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And I still have my Mega Driver, which will come to my advantage at some point when I finally, feel like some person will win it for definite or have a really good point scoring weekend, which could give me that boost to just absolutely smash this league for another year, I guess you could say. But no, the teams are looking quite strong at the minute. And I do have my regrets about not changing out the person I said I was going to change out, Lance Stroll, even though I forgot to change him out again. And by the time I remembered, once again, it was Friday, it was all locked in, and I was out of luck.
Yeah, you're currently in the lead. I'm second, but we're alternating teams here at the moment because you're first, you're third, and you're fifth, where I'm second, fourth, and sixth. So it's quite interesting. There is about 395 points between first and sixth, so it is still possible that my World Champions team down the bottom could pull in the lead, but I don't really think that's going to happen at this stage. Ryan, are you going to make any changes for the next race in France?
Well, as I still have my two main teams that were half joke teams, but I didn't realise that when you make your first team, that should actually be your good team because it automatically gets put into the main leagues, which I ended up just calling the Merc Engine Boys, which did work. Actually, it didn't work at all because I had Bottas, Vettel, Stroll, Norris and Russell, as it has always been with McLaren as the constructor. As we know, Danny Rick didn't really perform that well, so that dropped the constructor down. Bottas, well, don't need to comment on that. And Stroll, we all know what happened, very unfortunate. As well as Russell, like, come on. Everyone was dropping out of my team. The only person that gave me hope was Vettel, who surprisingly pulled off an amazing, I think it was, nearly nine places he managed to pull up in the second. That's mental, especially around Baku. And then Lando Norris as well, he sort of helped save me. And once again, Jap Scrap, which is mainly the Honda guys, plus Ocon. Ocon, once again, didn't even get a chance to start the race. But Tsunoda helped out a wee bit. He got his first P7, his best finishing yet. And then my main team, Bottas, Perez, Stroll, Norris, Gasly. Now, to be fair, this would have worked really, really strong in my favour if I had have switched out Stroll for Vettel, because that would have meant I would have had the race winner, second place, third place. I would have had Norris, but I would have had the deficit of Bottas. So it would have worked out quite well for me, actually. I did work it out. I would have had an extra 200 and something points if I didn't have Stroll in my team. And I would be actually beating my supposed best team.
Yeah, you would have took the lead. My World Champions team, which is sort of my third team, actually scored the most. It was very similar scoring weekend for all my teams. I think I was mainly helped the fact that I had Pierre Gasly as my turbo driver for the World Champions team. For my transfer crew team, I obviously had the Stroll. He's the one that makes up the numbers. Got the -20 for him. But then I had Perez as my turbo driver, so I got a nice 102 points from him. And of course, my main team, I had Lando Norris as my turbo driver, so I got 64 points from him. Gasly also scoring well with 43. But Hamilton scoring only 5 points, which for a 7-time world champion, you think he could be doing better, but we all know the reasons for that. We'll start by talking a little bit about qualifying. Now, it's a very disruptive session. I think it probably has to go down as one of the longest qualifying sessions in some time. There was 4 red flags. There was 2 in Q1, 1 in Q2, and then obviously later on Q3. When Stroll brought the red flag first in Q1, and then followed by Giovinazzi. Do you think with them two drivers not able to progress, or do you think that really damaged their weekend?
Yeah, I think it really did. But at the same time, we seen that they actually managed to fight back quite a bit in the race. They didn't finish off too badly, to be honest, apart from Stroll obviously ending up on the wall again because of a tire failure, which ultimately I think it's been narrowed down that it is actually Pirelli's fault or Pirelli's problem. Because we've seen the same thing happen with Max Verstappen. Lance Stroll's went after 31 or 32 laps, and Max was quickly like only a lap difference between them, and it was the same tyre around the same amount of laps, even though the tyre was supposed to do about 40 laps, it only did about 31, 32. Now obviously there's going to be different factors on aero, down, the downforce, the traction they have going through corners, how much acceleration they put out going out of the corner, like all those factors go into play. But the fact that two had the exact same outcome, I don't think it was right. But no, in qualifying it was quite lengthy, as you were saying. The 4 red flags. I was like, are we ever gonna get to Q3 at this stage? Eventually we did, and it actually was quite a show, to be honest. I thought it was quite good seeing them battle it out the last 10.
Yeah, I think the beauty about the red flags coming out meant that the drivers they all had one final run, and they were all backing each other up, and it reminded me of Monza a few years ago where only Leclerc crossed the line, where they didn't qualify. They were going that slow. Obviously didn't even get to set their lap times because there was, well, are we going to blame Ferrari for potentially throwing this qualifying as well to give Leclerc another pole two races in a row after Sainz ended up bringing out the red flag, but that's after Tsunoda crashed. I just wonder, Sainz, from the onboard, it looked like he didn't see Tsunoda and it just happened that he crashed as well, or do you think there could have been a possibility where he seen Tsunoda and thought, I'm going to go straight on here, the red flag's going to come out?
See, what I can understand from it is he was coming into that point, and if you do take the footage, slowly frame by frame until he comes into the view, he is starting to slow down. You can see the car tilting forward for that corner as he's starting to slow down, and you just see the rear wing of Tsunoda, like the very edge of the rear wing of Tsunoda's car, and that's whenever he starts to lock up. So maybe he did see it, slammed it, and was like, right, I'm either going to try and slow down as hard as I can and turn it out of this corner, or I'm going to go hit it off into the runoff area. And he did go for the runoff area, but he just locked up too hard and he just spun the car and hit the wall. So I do think he didn't do exactly the right thing. I think he should have just taken the escape road and still braked hard, not to the point of locking up and probably damaging his car, but just enough to get him through close even to the barriers at the end of the runoff area, because there's still quite a lengthy bit of runoff from where he started braking. But no, Tsunoda didn't help things for Sainz, and it definitely didn't help his weekend either. I don't think that put him in the best of moods.
Obviously the red flag did help Charles Leclerc claim a second pole position in a row. I don't think Ferrari really should be at the very front based on the form, and given the type of circuit it is. On paper it doesn't really suit Ferrari, but and you could say the same about Monaco, but Ferrari did look impressive throughout the weekend, throughout the practice. They were right up the front, but then we did see Mercedes away down. We don't really know the problems for that. They could have been, I know there was an issue with the wings. They were running 2 different wings and stuff, and probably different practice setups and different programs they run through. But for Charles Leclerc to be in pole for the second race in a row, do you think that is the sort of confidence boost that he and also Ferrari need to help them push forward? And it's not even close the gap on Mercedes and Red Bull anymore. It's to stay in this fight for third with McLaren.
Yeah, I think, Leclerc has this determination that we don't really get to see much of after the race, because obviously he hasn't been in that top step yet so far this season, just due to unfortunate events. Monaco, I think he genuinely probably would have won it if he did get away on pole. And then again in this race, it wasn't so much unfortunate, but we knew that they didn't have the straight line speed. But no, I definitely think, even at the end of the race, Charles was fighting against Lando and fighting against Pierre, and it was an absolute storm, the three of them going at each other around the tight, narrow 90-degree corners of Baku. So I think it's definitely something that they're working on, and they're trying to figure out where they can go faster. But they definitely had major time gains in the corners, which is what they were good at, the low-speed, narrow corners. The same as in Monaco, that's where they had gained most of their speed. And they lost most of their speed as well in Monaco, going out past the ocean, I guess I could say the Marina Bay, heading into the main chicane. Along that back straight as well in Baku, that's where they're losing most of their time. But they still managed to gain enough time in the corners that when they come to that straight, the time they lose is just slightly proportional to what they've gained. So they end up being roughly the fastest around the circuit, which is a real confidence boost for them, especially whenever there's still maybe I think 2 or 3 more slightly street circuity type tracks where they could gain some major points, which could actually secure them that third place Constructors' Championship, which would be nice to see, Ferrari back up in the top 3, but I don't think McLaren's going to let them go too easy.
I think a big issue for Ferrari could be the Singapore Grand Prix being cancelled. I think that's also going to be a negative for Red Bull as well, because there is rumours about 2 races in Austin where the USA Grand Prix is held, which I think is a track that will suit Mercedes well. Do you agree with that, or do you think Red Bull might have a better opportunity this year than most years?
I think whenever we go to Austin, Texas, it's normally a Mercedes dominated track, but Red Bull seem to have a really, really good strong package that those weekends that they're quite competitive against the Mercedes. So whenever you compare it and you actually look at how much time they're losing from each other currently compared to last season, it's almost minimalistic. I think Red Bull are going to come back in these other, main permanent tracks, and they're just going to wipe the floor with Mercedes. I know we've been saying it for a long time, maybe this is the year that Mercedes finally get it hard. And it's happening. The constructors, it's been extended now for Red Bull because of both Bottas and Hamilton not scoring points. I think it ended something like was it 55 or 53 points
for
run?
For Hamilton, yeah.
Just for Hamilton, not the team?
No, for the team, it's the first time that both cars have finished inside or have finished the race but failed to score points since 2012.
Jeez.
So that's Rosberg Schumacher era. So
that's
not even the hybrid era.
That is bad. That just shows how bad of a weekend they really had here in Azerbaijan. That's mental.
Yeah, because usually a bad weekend for Mercedes means Hamilton finished 7th or 8th and Bottas maybe claiming 9 for 10 for even maybe 11 for 12. That is Hamilton's first race he hasn't finished since Austria 2018, which is the race before my first Grand Prix I was at, which feels like ages ago now, and that just shows you the run he's been on, which is incredible to go that long, 54 races to finish every single race and in the points as well for all of them.
I think it was announced there in the press conference there just this weekend on Thursday that Lando Norris is currently the only driver who has I can't exactly remember exactly how he said it, but he's the only driver to have points in the last year and have stayed in the top 10 throughout the whole of the year. Every other driver has not been in the top 10 at some point within the last year, which is quite insane to think that this one guy, Lando Norris, has been in the points more times than Lewis Hamilton.
Norris better than Hamilton. That could be a potential title for us. Just looking at the qualifying or the starting grid for the race, I think this has to be probably one of the most exciting top 6 I've seen in a long time. Leclerc in the front row with Hamilton, with Verstappen and Gasly behind him, with Sainz and Norris, and you've even got Perez and Tsunoda behind them. And if you want to go further, you have Alonso and then Bottas and the final Mercedes. It's a very exciting grid, and it's so mixed. There's four different teams in the top 4, and I think for Red Bull to have their sort of B team, sister team alongside them shows how quick they could have went if the red flag wasn't out, but also how quick that AlphaTauri team are progressing this year.
Yeah, I don't even think it's just so much AlphaTauri, because we've seen that Pierre Gasly, he basically is like Max in the Red Bull. He has had that car adapted around him, and Pierre just seems to be that comfortable with the car now that he's able to find the limits, the absolute tipping point of where the car will lose traction, so very few centimeters away from hitting the walls. Like, I think between the two teams, it's going to be closer than what we think it is. Maybe not so much in the permanent tracks, but the street circuits, I definitely think that the AlphaTauri seems to be a great package compared to the Red Bull. Yes, Red Bull's obviously fantastic as well. And then to see, the Ferraris up there as well, it's about time we've seen Ferrari. But to even have, Sainz, Norris and Perez just all in that line behind them is crazy. And I do feel quite bad for Sebastian Vettel, because he was actually improving on his last time, which would have seen him into Q3, although we know what happened in Q2. But I do feel sorry for him that he had that opportunity to actually start higher up in the grid, because he managed to switch on the tires. He was really comfortable with the circuit and the car this weekend, which explains his race result. But no, I think qualifying was quite interesting, definitely.
If we move on to the race now, and for the most part until sort of the last 3 laps, there wasn't really too many noteworthy moments. I think the big one was the Lance Stroll, are we going to say it's a tyre failure or running over debris to cut the tyre? Pirelli have said they're going to take a look at it, the full investigation. I think it obviously happened to Max Verstappen with 4 laps to go with the race, and he obviously said to the press afterwards that it was debris, that's what happened, and Pirelli immediately come out and said that, but then his dad took to Twitter and says that's what they always say. So obviously I think he must think it's the Pirelli's fault, and given that they've went a step softer this year than they did the last time we visited was 2019, and given how much the cars have changed and the tyres have changed, and with so little testing time this year, and probably the disrupted sessions in practice and qualifying, do you think that there just wasn't enough data to get the tyres right for this weekend?
I think what's happened is that Pirelli have actually overestimated the lifespan of their tyres. I do feel we probably should have went up and used the C2, C3 and C4, the mid-range tyres, instead of going down to that softest stage. I think we would have seen still a really great race, and most of them might have ended up using mediums and even the softs. Obviously then this race the mediums were technically would have been the softs if they had have went up a stage. And they were still quite quick, from softs to hards. The hards weren't exactly a slow tyre either. We've seen a lot of cars coming out in the fresh hard tyre, and even people out in the softs. Yes, the softs were probably at their end of their working lifespan, but people were switching on the hard tyres really quick compared to the softs, which was quite surprising to see. But when the tyre, there was talks about it over the weekend, from qualifying to the race, Pirelli increased the pressure in all the tyres by 1 psi. Now that's not a lot of pressure, but when you look at these Formula 1 cars, the very slightest measurement or the slightest increase in anything will alter the car's performance massively. And we don't know how much pressure or downforce is being exerted onto these tyres, as every car will be different. But it just goes to show that it happened twice. Could it be that maybe Max and Stroll took the exact same racing line and caught the exact same piece of debris? It's likely, yes, but you've also got to factor that, why did it tear apart so quick? If you're not going to get a cut in the exact same place on the tyre, but you will get a cut in the tyre somewhere. But it seems that in both pictures we see afterwards, the tyre is shredded in the exact same way from the sidewall, which I would have expected more of it to shred into the actual grain of the tyre itself, where you would be running over, where you run over the debris, but it was the sidewall that completely sheared away. So I think it might have actually just been a Pirelli tyre issue that they overestimated.
It would make sense if it was a tyre failure, because neither team, I think, got any indication that it was going to happen. You expect with all the sensors and the lap data and on the tyres and stuff as well, that if they thought they were getting the puncture, they would have some indication, the slightest drop of pressure, because you cut into the tyre, there'll be a slight drop of pressure.
Yeah, like we've seen with George Russell, they picked up on that puncture back when he filled in for Lewis Hamilton. They picked up on that puncture straight away, and Like, the only reason they didn't notice it like as quick as what they could have was because as he was driving, he was building temperature, and with temperature increasing in the tires, it actually, obviously, heat expands, so the tires were still expanding under the heat, thermal conduction. So yes, the tire pressure was still going up, but contrasted to what it should be doing, that's how they picked up on it. They were like, right, this isn't going up as fast as what it should. We have a puncture, and of course they did have a puncture. Whereas this, there was no indications at all of any pressure drop in their tires, and they have definitely, like, we deal with tire pressure sensors all the time in cars. So never mind having it in race cars, like, they're going to be the most high tech to the exact, maybe 10 decimal places. I don't know how exact the pressures are. So for it to just randomly explode, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think what I heard Crafty say at the start of the race was the tyres from the 2019 race, the hard tyres, some of them were doing like 50 laps, and it was a 55 lap race, or even maybe
it was
short.
51.
So you seen George Russell on the first lap pit, and Minecraft saying he might be able to go to the end of the race. Obviously he didn't, which he obviously had to retire right at the very last lap, I think it was, but I'm sort of glad he didn't, but because I think he pitted, was there a safety car for the Stroll incident? There was a safety car.
Yeah.
Because Stroll's the driver who needed a safety car. He did get a safety car, but then he couldn't continue on. So I think it would have been, without that safety car, it would have been interesting to see if there had been any more drivers pitted, or because I think Schumacher come in at the end, he was on a launch stunt. So it would have been interesting to see if there had been any more tyres sort of explode throughout the race, and potentially even if there was no red flag. The Verstappen incident obviously brought out the red flag, and apparently Christian Horner, or the Red Bull team, suggested to bring out the red flag to allow the jolly drivers to pit. Do you think that was them being concerned about the safety for the other drivers, or do you think it was, right, we've got this far in the race, there's 3 laps to go, if we go and count back here, Max Verstappen's going to pick up the win. We'll have our first 1-2 in a couple of years anyway. Do you think that could have been possible, or was it a genuine safety concern from Christian Horner and the team?
Either way, there would have been one positive but 2 negatives to that. Because if you really think about it, if they did red flag it and they weren't going to continue, it's going to be counted back. Yes, Verstappen wins, and then it's Perez. But also, he could have called for the red flags, and they will restart, which they did. But who's to know that maybe Hamilton didn't get ahead of Perez, and then they've lost that altogether. They don't win at all. So at the same time, you have to look, well, did he do it because he was confident they were going to stop the race indefinitely because there was only going to be 2 laps left to race? It's hard to tell, but at the same time, they had everything to lose just as much as what Lewis had, and I honestly find that funny. He said in his car, it's not a sprint race, it's a marathon, and then he bins it into the first corner on the restart. Oh, I was like, well, that was some sprint race, wasn't it? You forgot to brake. Oh, I genuinely never smiled as much in my life whenever I seen the lovely Perez, Vettel, and then Gasly. I was like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah, obviously for the red flag, they restarted the race, which I was surprised. As soon as the red flag came out, I said, that's that race over. There's no point in restarting it for 2 laps. But then I thought, you know what, why not do a 2 lap sprint race, because the race isn't over. There's still 2 laps to run. There's enough daylight. If it had been getting dark or whatever, you could understand it. But it wasn't a very lengthy red flag as we've seen in the past, like in Canada 2011, when that sort of length. It was a relatively quick one, and they were able to get back out. And I was so glad they done a standing start, because since they've been able to do that, it just adds that bit more excitement the last couple of laps of the race. Because that had been a safety car, there was a strong possibility that they could have just ran the safety car at the end of the race, allow everyone to come in, and it wasn't even fresh tyres they put on, it was used tyres for pretty much everyone, the top 8 apart from Vettel. So you could look back at that the Red Bull safety concern, some of them drivers only had their tyres on for a few laps, yet they were bringing the pit to go on softer tyres that had done even more laps. So surely that would possibly be an even bigger safety concern. We never know, any real speculation at this moment, but we did get it was a 2-lap sprint race right at the end, and as you said, Perez was on pole for this. And obviously I think Silverstone will be disappointed for paying all this money to get the first sprint race and then Azerbaijan take that crown off them. But we've seen Hamilton go straight on. Apparently he hit what Mercedes called the magic button, and Anthony Davidson was very cautious on commentary not to say what happened. He knows what that button does. It obviously does something to the brakes, or something that meant that he locked up going in, because you seen the smoke coming from the brakes and the tires right on the grid, and I said at that time that he's going to crash out here, this turn 1, because his car didn't look right, and as the car's going around the corner he goes straight on, and I think from his reaction you could tell he knew he'd done something wrong straight away. But obviously then we got a couple of good laps racing, and we've seen a fantastic battle between Pierre Gasly and Charles Leclerc. I think probably the battle of the race for P3. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it definitely was probably one of the highlights of the race. I think, even with Lando Norris jumping in as well, coming into it, he just all of a sudden appeared around the corner and was like, "Hey, hello Charles, I want to join this battle with Gasly too." And Charles was defending so strongly against Lando, and he was still attacking Gasly at the same time. Charles is actually surprisingly a really, really good driver for what people make him out to be. He's the Monegasque, he's for Ferrari. Ferrari's not a good team. Charles is their number one baby boy and all this. But he actually is quite a really good race driver. He was able to attack and defend aggressively at the exact same time, and not a lot of drivers can do that, especially in this day and age. Massive.
Yeah, it was obviously an interesting podium as well, because you had 3 drivers who all had Red Bull connections. You had Sergio Perez, who won the race. He obviously drives for Red Bull, and he's the second driver of Red Bull to win since Daniel Ricciardo, which quite interesting. It sort of puts to bed that sort of the second driver disadvantage, and he could still be disadvantaged if Perez has been that good that he's been able to sort of close in the difference even more. The second place was obviously Sebastian Vettel, first podium for Aston Martin Formula 1. His first podium since he left Ferrari, first podium since Turkey last year. We won the ladder races last year anyway.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, because Singapore was in my head, but I'm not sure. I don't think Singapore ran. I think it was Turkey. I think it was him, Ricciardo, in the podium there as well. And then obviously one of our favourite drivers in this channel, I think the favourite, Pierre Gasly, third place, first time in the podium since Monza 2020, that historic victory. I think to see Gasly on the podium was just fantastic. It was fantastic to see Perez and Vettel as well, but
technically we saw 3 Red Bull drivers.
Yeah,
Vettel was an ex-Red Bull, Sergio's a current, and Pierre Gasly, he's an Red Bull driver.
Yeah. Yep, Gasly is doing everything he should to get promoted to the Red Bull team, but they're not bringing him back.
I think it's just, they've seen him, and yes, he might have been brought in a bit too early for especially him in a sort of junior career type. Whenever we've got Sergio Perez, who's done over 10 years now, and he's gone into a team, he's got the experience. He's now 5 races in now, and he is confident. This guy is delivering the goods for Red Bull. And I don't think he's going to back down out of it. Like we've seen how Alex and Pierre just dropped off. They were strong for maybe the first half. Well, Pierre maybe not so much per Pierre. But, they were strong for maybe the first couple of races and then they dropped off. Where it seems Perez is the opposite. He was really weak coming in and now he's absolutely smashing it. We're going to see a lot more from Sergio Perez this year.
He did say that it would take him 5 races to get the most out of the Red Bull car, and in race 6 he finally took victory, so it was great to see. I think now I'm going to round out the race by talking about our second favourite driver in the grid, Nikita Mazepin. Definitely not second favourite, probably least favourite by a long stretch. He tried to, severely injure Mick Schumacher in the final lap. That's putting it nicely. Or Mick Schumacher said he was trying to kill both of them. Coming in the final corner, Schumacher was going for an overtake, and Mazepin decided he would just nudge to the right enough to just close the gap to where Schumacher almost had to go under the wall, which probably would have been better than crashing into Mazepin. But it was a very dangerous move, and the FIA have said they're going to be investigating it now. Because it's an internal team thing, I would expect very little to come out of it, but has it got to the point where Mazepin should be getting a race ban over this?
I'm surprised he hasn't got his race license suspended yet. They get a certain amount of penalty points throughout the year based on things they've done. But Mazepin has less than a couple of drivers already on the grid. Obviously, it accumulates through a yearly process. So even if you gain 5 in through one season, but it was all at the end of the season, that means your first half of next season, you want to keep as little points or penalty issues as possible down. Otherwise, you get a one race ban. Now, for Mazepin, I don't think a one race ban is going to do justice. He needs to be locked up and stuck in a simulator for maybe another year and then brought back into the Haas Formula 1 team. I don't even think he deserves to be in Haas. I don't even think he deserves to be in Williams. Bring ART into Formula 1, stick him there, because I think that's where he belongs. Slowest car on the grid, he's not on it because, the Williams, sometimes Nicholas Latifi, is a lot slower than the two Haas drivers. Shocker. Mazepin, Mazepin, Mazza in the jail.
It's the fact that Schumacher had a very slow pit stop as well and still managed to get out ahead of him, which I just find hilarious. I think it's got to the point where he's far too dangerous, and if he keeps making moves like that, he should be nowhere near the grid.
It gives you a little reminder of another fellow Red Bull driver, Daniel. No, I was right. Danny Kvyat, the torpedo. Just slamming into the back of people, absolutely blasting it out of corners. It's the same sort of thing as what Mazepin does, except he spins. He doesn't really hit people, but he's going that way. And if he continues to do that, I don't think, no matter amount of his daddy's cash, which is a Lance Stroll song, but it's the same for the Russians, I guess. No amount of cash is going to stop him from getting a race ban, and he really needs more than one race ban, is what I think we're both sort of half agreeing on. He does need time to maybe rethink what he's trying to do this year. Like, Haas wants them to develop their skills. He's still trying to beat people, which, Mick, he's understood that. He's been like, yeah, I get the point. We're not going to be quick. We're not going to be challenging. But if there's the opportunity, we can learn about it, we can try it, but if it doesn't work, no harm. Whereas Mazepin's like, I'm going for this, I've hit him, oh well, I tried, but that's not what we're trying to get you to do, right? Oh no, I'm Russian, I do what I want. Just makes perfect sense.
It's a fact as well that there's rumours coming out that Mazepin might have to leave Formula 1 to go to the Russian army for a year. It's to complete... I've seen somewhere that he's doing a degree in Russia and he needs to do military service to complete that. Could you see him potentially just leaving the grid for a year just to do it then come back? Do you think he would come back a better driver?
Oh, I definitely think he will. He'll have a lot more discipline than what Gunther Steiner's going to put on him. Now, we know Gunther Steiner's quite an angry man. Get out of my office! Did he slam my door? We're not going to see anything like that, I don't think. But if he definitely goes to the military, I can see a changed man coming back, with a bit more discipline and a bit more, acceptance towards his team and where they stand. And who knows, maybe Haas might get a big influx of money come next season and something magic happens with the Ferrari power unit and they manage to become a midfield team again. Be magical, wouldn't it?
If Mazepin does have to leave, who would you replace him with?
If Mazepin goes, I wonder if it would be possible to have two Leclercs in the grid. How far away is Arthur? Is he still Formula 3?
He's only stepped into Formula 3.
Sure, Mazepin's in Formula 1. He couldn't be any worse, could he? He's in Formula 1. He did how many years in Formula 2? Was it just the one?
Two, I think.
He did 2 years in Formula 2 and straight into Formula 1. Oh, come on, Arthur, hurry up! You've got a year.
Yeah, I would probably potentially give the seat to Pietro Fittipaldi because I thought he was
Definitely.
impressive. Very impressive in IndyCar so far. Nico Hulkenberg's another option, would be a solid driver. But then I think Callum Ilott needs a seat in Formula 1. Mazepin's keeping him away from a seat. Giovinazzi could be as well. Yeah, I would go Hulkenberg or Callum Ilott. Prediction time for the French Grand Prix, the race we're all really looking forward to. Between that and Russia, we're looking forward to them. I know you're looking forward to Russia more than I am.
Oh yes.
Or is it even going to be the Russian Grand Prix? Because they're not. Mazepin isn't allowed to flag. They're not allowed to play the national anthem. I'm assuming it's going to be called the Russian Grand Prix.
It still probably will be, or they might get creative and call it something spectacular. I don't know what they're gonna call it, but I think it's still gonna be the Russian Grand Prix. I can't see them calling it anything else.
Yeah.
If they do, everyone. I don't think anyone is really too bothered about the whole thing anymore. Like, yes, obviously they did cheat and they deserved it, but throughout all the sports, just leave it to the Olympics and be done with it. Nobody cheated in Formula 1, not that we know of. I don't think Danny Kvyat, meant to drive into the back of people.
Mazepin's the question there.
Well, that's Mazepin.
So
predictions time.
Yeah, pole position for the French Grand Prix.
Pole position, French Grand Prix, permanent track, Lewis Hamilton.
I'll go Sergio Perez in the back of his first victory with Red Bull. Who do you reckon's going to win the race?
Who's going to win the race? This is going to be French. We'll stick it with Max. I think Max is just going to get past him at some point in the race, whether it's an undercut. I think Max is going to take the win.
I'm going to throw another usual wildcard prediction here. Bottas.
Woo!
I reckon he'll be back.
I nearly got overtaken by a Williams.
Yeah, twice. He almost got overtaken by Russell again, but I think something will happen. I've got a feeling Bottas in France will be a dull, boring race, and no one will be talking about Bottas taking victory.
I thought Bottas was going to do something spectacular in Azerbaijan because he has proven he is really good around that track, but it just seems things don't work out sometimes.
Podium. I'll finish this first. Bottas, Perez, Hamilton. Verstappen aging issue. That's how he's not going to finish.
Right. I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a very classic type of podium. We're going to start off with Verstappen. We're going to see Hamilton. We're not going to see Bottas. Instead, we're going to see Esteban Ocon, his home race.
That's an interesting shout.
That's if his car doesn't break down on him.
That's very true. Fastest lap. Who do you think for that one?
Fastest lap, Valtteri Bottas. If he hasn't got a chance and he's in the top 10, he's going to go for that extra point. It's just facts.
Okay, I'm going to go for Lewis Hamilton. And you're surprised. You actually got this right last time, saying Yuki Tsunoda would be in the top 10. You're going to go for something similar, something different this time round? Because it's not a surprise this time round, is it? Okay,
it's not so much of a surprise because it's the French Grand Prix, and
yeah.
And people think, it's still a more exciting race than Russia, but I think, Russia's a much better race. Don't at me, because you don't know my at. But no, anyway, surprise. Let's go with a Papaya Chiar will finish in the top 5. Whether it be Daniel Ricciardo or Lando Norris.
It's definitely possible. It's sort of a borderline surprise, but it's one of them.
Or do you want a real wild card throw out here?
Go on, proper wild card. This is the whole point of this one.
You ready?
Yes.
George Russell, start 11th, with throughout practice. So FP1, 2, 3, qualifying 1, and the race. There will be no Mazepin.
Oh.
So we've got 2 on the same card. So no Mazepin that whole weekend. And George Russell starting 11th.
But he can spin if he gets to Q3.
Well, if he manages to get to Q3, that's going to be the most spectacular thing I've ever seen in my life.
Very, very true. My surprise... Oh, this is actually a real tough one. I'm going to go for... Because it's the French Grand Prix, there's going to be 2 safety cars and 15 cars to finish. It's going to be a belter of a race.
15 cars to finish. Here's one for you. Who do you think is going to finish higher out of the French drivers? Pierre or Ocon?
I'm backing Pierre all the way.
I think Ocon actually might have a slightly more better chance at this. You know, it's a French team. A French team at a French track with a French driver. All the dots are connecting up, where with Gasly he's a French driver in an Italian team at a French track. You know, he's not got all the links.
Yeah, but it's Pierre. He's a fantastic driver.
I think Ocon's going to do something special.
We'll just round this out by a couple of things that happened this week in Formula 1 history. June 8th, 2014, Daniel Ricciardo took his first victory in only his sixth race for Red Bull at the Canadian Grand Prix. On June 10th, 2007, Lewis Hamilton took his first Grand Prix victory after finishing the podium in his first 5 races with McLaren. On June 13th, 1939, the legendary Jackie Stewart was born, who then started 99 Grand Prix in his career. Ryan, any final thoughts before we round out this podcast?
No, I think, we're going on to a slightly better race in terms of what Monaco was. But I don't think anything this year. Actually, Spa might be the only thing that can top this. Spa and Belgium, they might be the only 2 Grand Prix this year that can top Baku for me.
Well, it depends if there's a lot of damage to the track with the rain over the weekend.
That's true, that is true. But I do feel that we're going to have some good races up ahead. You know, and I think France might actually just be a better race than what we've seen, apart from Baku, because Baku is quite a really good race.
Yeah, it definitely was, especially the final 3 laps. But as that's going to bring to the end to this podcast, episode 8 of the second season of Just Another F1 podcast. Thank you all so much for listening to this one. Of course, the next episode will be out on all the usual podcasts and platforms, YouTube as well. We're going to have a lot more content coming out over the next while. We've solved our issues with YouTube and stuff, so we're going to be back bringing brand new content over the next few weeks. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Hope to see you on the next one. Goodbye.